I've thought about this open on the Boston Celtics and Ime Udoka suspension. I've thought about this quite a bit. Just like a lot of you on Wednesday night late, you're like, wait, what's going on? Woj announcing that he would be suspended for conduct for one season from the Boston Celtics, but it was vague. We didn't know what it meant. Then as things started kind of being pieced together, it was an inappropriate relationship, and then it was an inappropriate relationship with a team employee. There was a bunch of different speculation on who the employees could potentially be, which absolutely sucks for everybody that's female that's involved with the Celtics. But at the same time, too, I don't know the perfect way to handle this because I've seen a lot of criticism, and I'm not saying the criticism is inaccurate, but I also think it's a bit of a, well, you should, after the thing that is done, it's, well, it should have been done this way, it should have been done this way. And we're like, okay, they couldn't just fire Ime Udoka. Maybe they don't want to. I don't know what his future is, but we're going to get into that here in this open too as well. But if they just fired him for no reason in September, then guess what's going to happen? People are going to speculate. They're going to ask questions. That's the way it works. If you were to have Ime Udoka suspended, but then also immediately name the female that's involved in this, I don't know that was going to go over all that great either. When I listened to Wick Grossbeck, the owner of the Celtics, talk this morning, there was something that was brought to their attention right after the NBA Finals, sometime in July. We didn't get a specific date. I don't think that's super relevant. The fact that this investigation has been going on with an independent law firm since July and it wasn't leaked, that actually surprises me. So things get leaked. It sucks. It sucks for every female employee that's involved with the Celtics, but it's unfortunately kind of the way things work. And if you have a better plan, then you should be in PR crisis because this is a really odd situation because it's so unprecedented. Because you're sitting there going, what could he have done that was bad enough for him to be suspended for a year, but he's still going to keep his job? So, like anyone else, your head starts going through all these different scenarios. Like, okay, well, he couldn't have done anything that was beyond a certain line, or he'd just straight up be fired and they'd be done with him, and it would have been some kind of protocol, and they wouldn't even be on the hook for the rest of his money. He's not going to resign because he's probably going to figure out, well, is there a way I can still get my money? And I think that's where the Celtics were like, if this isn't fireable, but it might be after the year is up, does that prevent us having to deal with any kind of lawsuit for any firing that was unfair? Because if it was a consensual relationship, which is how it's being reported, a consensual relationship between the head coach of the Boston Celtics and a team employee, then what can really be done? Because stuff like this actually happens. So this entire time, I'm left with constantly asking, is there more? There has to be more. And why would they want him around if they're so upset with him to do this? Now, there's one version of events here where it's like, well, maybe they're just totally unfair. What? That the Celtics, like, they shouldn't have done this. They shouldn't have suspended a coach for having an improper relationship because this shit happens all the time. Okay, but let's ask ourselves this question. Are the Celtics just idiots? Would they, with a team that just lost the NBA Finals, who looks like a terrific young head coach? I'm a Udoka fan as a coach. I really, really became a big fan of his this season as far as a basketball coach. I'm thinking, would they go, hey, you know what? Let's screw up our team plans here by excessively punishing a coach here for something that just sort of happens all the time? That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense. And as Wick Grossbeck pointed out numerous times, like, we are dealing with something that is somewhat unprecedented. So I know there's been a bunch of theories online, a bunch of different things, and a lot of the theories have been wrong, but it keeps me getting back to asking the question over and over again, what could have happened here for the Celtics to hand out this kind of punishment, and yet we don't really know what happened? And I'm just going to let my gut guide me here, and that I think Ime fucked up, man. I think he fucked up. Not so much that he immediately is fired, but enough that it's like, no. You're not, this isn't just going to be a conversation here. Like, you crossed the line. Now, I remember being younger and thinking about, whatever, however your family grew up. I think a lot of us are probably the same here. As you kind of think your family's the only family with its flaws and everybody else is perfect. The Crate and Barrel family. Like, hey, they've got napkins outside for just afternoon snacks. That's cloth napkins. And their lemonade pitcher's always full. Like, what the hell's going on? That's awesome. I want that. And then you realize everybody's got their problems. Then, you get older and maybe you get married and you realize how tough that is. And then you'll hear stories about the neighbors. You're like, oh, I thought they were so happy. right? Or maybe you have a friend that gets involved in something and you're like, hey, what are you doing? And then the friend's like, well, things haven't been great. I'm thinking about moving out, or, the woman I'm talking to, or, all these different scenarios that you run through your head where when you're a little kid, you're like, man, that'll never happen. This is real life. This is stuff that happens. So we don't know all the details of why Ime would put himself in this situation and why he would do it with a female team employee. But I think a lot of us that have been through any life experiences understand that these things aren't always cut dried. There's other people that are out there misrepresenting what's going on with a relationship or not having. And then you have the athlete part of it, okay? This is some, not all, but some. I've always felt this, that the athletes are desensitized. Not all athletes, but a lot of athletes are fairly desensitized to what it means to have to be in a relationship. Not that the rest of us don't fuck around and screw up or make mistakes, but when you're around it constantly as an athlete, and I can just, I'll share a couple stories. Like I remember talking to one guy who played in the league for a long time, and I became close enough with enough guys through all the ESPN years. And I would ask about like, well, how does this work? Like, how would this work? And I'd be like, well, you have your wife and then you have your girlfriend. I'm like, okay, like, is it known? Do some of the wives just kind of know the deal? And it's like, well, some do, some don't. But the girlfriend part of it, like, there's not really any rules. I'm like, well, what do you mean by no rules? It's like, well, if you're not married to the girlfriend, then that means your teammate can try to get with her if she wants to get with your teammate. I was like, wait, that's fucked up. He's like, well, you're already doing something wrong, so why do you have the right to have a moral standard about what your teammates can? I'm like, this is so screwed up. Like, doesn't this start a ton of problems? And he was like, yeah, a ton of problems. And I'm like, well, that doesn't seem to be that much fun. Other stories about ticket guys having to make sure that they're placing the girlfriend in a section that's away from where the wives are or girlfriends. I think there's a real desensitization of, it doesn't mean you're not in love. It doesn't mean you want to say or do all the right things. It just means you're on the road a little bit. And it means that you're operating with a different set of rules. And when you're a male or female in a position of power, people desire you, whether it's money, fame. Think about some of the things you've heard at your own workplace over the years where you're like, wait, what's going on? And you're like, why would that happen? You're like, that person's got the corner office. Weird shit happens. So in that sense, none of this is that different. But there are certain clues. There are certain clues through the reports that I've read, through the press conference. Like even Woj was on First Take, and he kind of passively threw a quote, maybe there will be more. I think Wick was even vague. Like, think about this. They are being everything is being, at least by the standards of the news outlets and the TV shows and the press conferences, they are being incredibly vague about what the actual act was and who it was with. And I think there's a reason there. I think that's the clue. Right? Are they being vague because they're just dicks? Are they being vague about it all because they just decided in September before the season gets started to just make things more difficult and be mean to Ime Udoka? Or is there another layer to this that, again, not in that category where there's no coming back from, but in the category of a line was crossed and this is the punishment and no further questions?